Did you know why your brain stops caring after one person? This is the hidden reason humans switch off and the exact number where it happens. Have you ever wondered why a single photograph of one suffering child can move an entire country to tears, and yet a report about 2 million people dying of the same thing barely moves anyone at all? You would think the bigger the number, the bigger the feeling. That is how most of us assume the human heart works. But it doesn't work that way. And the reason why reveals something deeply uncomfortable about how we are all wired. Something that has shaped wars, genocides, and charity campaigns for as long as humans have existed. In 2015, a Syrian toddler named Alan Kurdi was found on a beach in Turkey. The image of his small body, face down in the sand, spread across every screen on Earth within hours. Donations to Syrian refugee organizations spiked by hundreds of % overnight. Governments that had been silent for years suddenly found their voices. The world, for a brief moment, felt something enormous. And yet, by that point, over 200,000 Syrians had already died in the same conflict. Their deaths had been reported. The numbers had been published. Journalists had written about it for years. 200,000 deaths moved almost nobody, but one photograph of one child moved the world. A psychologist at the University of Oregon named Paul Slovic spent decades trying to understand why this happens. And what he found is one of the most quietly disturbing things ever documented about the human mind. He called it psychic numbing. You see, when you hear about one person suffering, like someone with a name, a face, and a story, your brain does something almost involuntary. It reaches out emotionally. It imagines, it feels, and that feeling is what drives people to act. But the moment the number goes from 1 to 2, something weird started happening. Your brain begins to step back slightly. And as the number keeps climbing, 10, 100, 1,000, the emotional response doesn't grow with it. It actually shrinks. By the time you reach a number large enough to be called a tragedy, the human brain has already converted those lives into something it can process more easily. A statistic. Slovic ran an experiment that showed just how early this collapse begins. He gave participants a chance to donate money to a starving child named Rokia in Mali. Her photograph, her name, her story. People gave generously. Then he showed a different group, 2 children, Rokia and a boy named Musa. Same photographs, same stories, but just one more face. Donations dropped. The feeling had already begun to fade at the number 2. The brain, overwhelmed by the impossibility of fully feeling for more than one person at a time, quietly began to withdraw. This is not cruelty, and it is not indifference in the way we usually mean that word. It is something older and stranger than that. The human brain evolved in small communities, groups of maybe 150 people at most. Everyone had a name, everyone had a face. Your emotional system was built to care deeply about a manageable number of individuals because that is the world your ancestors actually lived in. A number like 2 million was simply never a thing any human brain had to process for most of history. So when that number appears today, the brain doesn't expand to feel it. It does the opposite. It compresses the feeling until it fits into something it already knows how to handle. And what it already knows how to handle is the individual. One face, one name, one story. Everything beyond that becomes background. This is why charities figured out something counterintuitive a long time ago. Organizations like Save the Children don't show you statistics. They give you one child name, from one specified village and one photograph. Because they discovered through hard experience that showing you the full scale of a crisis actually reduces donations. The numbers are too large, the brain retreats. But give someone a single child to think about, and the emotional system engages fully, the way it was always designed to. Now here is where the pattern actually goes darker. Slovic also found something that the people in charge of reporting on mass atrocities have never quite managed to solve. When you add statistics to an individual's story, when you show someone Rokia's photograph and then tell them that she represents 2.4 million starving children, donations actually go down compared to showing the photograph alone. The numbers don't add weight to the story, they cancel the feeling. And this is where it stops being just a curiosity about human psychology and starts being something you have to sit with. Governments know this pattern. Media organizations know this pattern. Every charity, every humanitarian organization, every political campaign that has ever tried to mobilize public support knows this pattern. And so the question that follows is a difficult one. If the only way to make people feel is to give them one face, one name, and one story, then who decides which face gets chosen? Whose story gets told? And whose 200,000 deaths become the background noise that nobody felt? Alan Kurdi's photograph changed policy in multiple countries within days. The 200,000 who died before him did not. The difference between those two outcomes was not the scale of the suffering. It was the number of faces the world was asked to hold in its mind at one time. One face the world moves, 200,000 faces the world looks away. And the most unsettling part of all is this: knowing about psychic numbing does not protect you from it. Slovic tested that too. Even people who understood the psychology, who knew exactly what was happening in their own brains, still donated less when shown the group than when shown the individual. The pattern runs deeper than awareness. It runs in the architecture of how we feel. The blind spot here is not that we are heartless, it is that our hearts were built for a world much smaller than the one we actually live in now. And somewhere in the gap between the world we evolved for and the world we inherited, millions of people became statistics. Human beings with the tears dried off. Next on the blind spot, the hidden pattern behind why the people closest to you are often the ones who see you the least.